Toyota here in the U.S. because we're at the headquarters in Plano, Texas, where they're unveiling a slew of new vehicles that will go into production and on sale later this year, early next year, including the new RAV4. When you look at Toyota's footprint in the United States,
everything you thought you knew about the EV race just collapsed in a single announcement. Toyota, mocked for years as too slow, too cautious, too hybrid, just flipped the industry on its head. A new all-electric SUV, faster, cheaper, and now plugged straight into Tesla's charging empire. But here's the twist. This isn't just about cars. It's about your money, your choices, and who really runs tomorrow. So how does this change your job? Why didn't the industry see it coming? And what happens when Toyota's move forces everyone else into panic mode? The bombshell reveal. The world of electric vehicles has seen its fair share of surprises, but Toyota's latest move may be the most disruptive yet. In a single announcement, the company managed to jolt not just its competitors, but also the entire auto industry, sending analysts, journalists, and even everyday drivers scrambling for details. For years, critics mocked Toyota as slow to adapt, too cautious, too invested in hybrids, and unwilling to take the full leap into battery electric vehicles. Yet in 2026, the company revealed a bold new chapter: the all-electric Toyota BZ, a redesigned and re-engineered successor to the BZ4X. This vehicle is no longer a niche experiment. It boasts an upgraded 74.7 kilowatt-hour battery, a driving range that stretches beyond 300 miles, and design changes that fix nearly every complaint customers once had. Toyota's engineers unveiled an all-wheel drive model delivering over 330 horsepower, capable of launching from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds. Even more striking, the car will be compatible with Tesla's North American charging standard, a decision that instantly expands its charging options and eliminates one of the greatest barriers to adoption. But what shook the industry wasn't just the numbers, it was the symbolism. Toyota, once dismissed as overly cautious, had returned to the global EV race with a car that felt competitive, affordable, and accessible all at once. The industry gasped, and then it waited for the fine print. And the biggest shock wasn't the car itself, it was the price tag that followed. Pricing that defies gravity. When Toyota revealed the pricing of its new BZ, even seasoned analysts were stunned. The base trim came in more than $2,000 lower than the outgoing model, despite the longer range, faster acceleration, and improved design. In an industry where costs have been climbing due to material shortages and inflationary pressures, Toyota had done the unthinkable. It lowered the price while raising the stakes. That price positioning instantly placed the BZ in direct competition, not only with premium electric crossovers, but also with mid-range gasoline SUVs, forcing consumers to ask why they would pay more for less. This wasn't just a pricing decision, it was a declaration of war. For companies like Ford, General Motors, and Hyundai, the BZ's price undercut their own electric offerings by thousands, eroding their fragile margins and putting enormous pressure on executives to explain how they would compete. For Tesla, long accustomed to setting the tone in affordability and range, Toyota's announcement came as a sharp reminder that its days of enjoying uncontested dominance were fading. Suddenly, the most conservative automaker in the electric space had flipped the economics of the entire market. For consumers, the math was simple. Families could now envision a fully electric SUV with Toyota reliability for the cost of a used vehicle. That meant EVs were no longer luxury statements. They were attainable necessities. The industry could not ignore the ripple effects, but affordability is useless without access, and Toyota just unlocked the one door no one thought they could. If this already has you thinking, smash like and drop a comment below. Your voice matters here, and I want to know if you believe Toyota just changed everything. Plugging into the Tesla network. For years, one of the biggest frustrations with electric vehicles has been charging. Stations are inconsistent, networks are fragmented, and drivers constantly worry about whether they'll make it to the next plug. Toyota's announcement that the BZ will feature Tesla's North American charging standard was nothing short of a game changer. Overnight, Toyota drivers would gain access to the largest and most reliable charging network in the United States, erasing the fear of range anxiety and placing them in direct competition with Tesla owners on their own turf. This wasn't merely a technical upgrade, it was a strategic masterstroke. By adopting the NACS standard, Toyota sidestepped years of infrastructure investment, instantly granting its customers the freedom to charge almost anywhere Tesla drivers could. For consumers, this meant peace of mind. For competitors, it was a nightmare. Automakers like Hyundai and Volkswagen had spent billions building out separate charging networks, only to watch Toyota buy into Tesla's system with one decisive partnership. The impact was psychological as much as it was practical. Consumers now saw Toyota not as a hesitant laggard, but as a brand willing to make bold choices that benefit drivers. The playing field shifted overnight. Charging, once Toyota's weakness, had become its strength, and while competitors worried about chargers, Toyota quietly rewrote its own image. Rebranding the future. For Toyota, the reintroduction of the BZ wasn't just about hardware or charging, it was about reputation. The BZ4X, their earlier attempt, had been criticized for awkward styling, confusing interfaces, and mediocre range. By stripping the 4X from the name and presenting simply the Toyota BZ, the company signaled a fresh start. The design itself was sleeker, the cabin more intuitive, and crucially, Toyota had listened to customer feedback. Physical buttons returned for climate and audio controls, the touchscreen was enlarged for clarity, and the overall feel was more refined and familiar. This was more than cosmetic. Toyota understands that in the automotive market, perception shapes reality. A rebrand can erase past failures and reset consumer expectations, provided the product delivers. And in this case, it does. Early previews showed an SUV that looks every bit as polished as rivals from Tesla or Hyundai, with the added reassurance of Toyota's global service network. It wasn't just another EV, it was a symbol of Toyota reclaiming its narrative. The gamble worked. Where once critics accused Toyota of dragging its feet, they now acknowledged a company capable of learning from mistakes, pivoting quickly, and entering the market with a vengeance. The BZ name suddenly carried weight, not doubt. Yet what the industry would soon discover was that Toyota's most important play wasn't about branding at all. But the real magic wasn't in marketing. It was buried deep in the engineering blueprints. The horsepower surprise. Toyota's new BZ does not simply compete on efficiency, it competes on raw muscle. For years, enthusiasts dismissed electric crossovers as sensible but dull, great for school runs but hardly exciting behind the wheel. The latest BZ shatters that stereotype with performance figures that rival sports cars. Thanks to a redesigned dual-motor setup and silicon carbide semiconductor technology, the all-wheel drive version pushes out an astonishing 3,138 horsepower. That allows it to sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 5 seconds, a time that not long ago belonged only to high-end performance sedans and coupes. The significance of silicon carbide may sound like an engineer's obsession, but it represents a leap in efficiency. Traditional silicon transistors lose more energy as heat during acceleration, forcing larger cooling systems and higher energy demands. By moving to silicon carbide, Toyota squeezes more power into the same footprint, unlocking both faster response and reduced energy loss. In plain terms, the car feels sharper, quicker, and more responsive without sacrificing range. For Toyota, this is more than a number on a spec sheet. It is a cultural statement. After decades of being associated with reliability and practicality, Toyota can now claim adrenaline too. Buyers who once dismissed the brand as safe but boring suddenly have reason to look again. But raw power is meaningless without endurance, and Toyota's battery just changed the math. The battery revolution. Performance draws headlines, but batteries win markets. Toyota's new 74.7 kilowatt-hour pack does not just extend range, it changes the economics of owning an EV. In the XL E+ trim, drivers can now travel up to 314 miles on a single charge, a leap of more than 60 miles compared with the outgoing version. That extra cushion turns the BZ from a commuter's car into a genuine long-distance machine, one that families can trust for road trips without fear of constant charging stops. Yet Toyota's brilliance lies not only in the added miles, but also in the cost structure. By refining battery chemistry and focusing on manufacturing efficiency, they managed to deliver more capacity without raising the price. In fact, as revealed in the announcement, the base trim actually costs over $2,000 less than before. In a time when lithium and nickel prices have been volatile, Toyota has managed to achieve economies of scale that elude many competitors. Consumers care less about kilowatt hours than they do about peace of mind. They want assurance that their vehicle can take them across state lines without stress, and that they are not paying a luxury premium for that privilege. Toyota has turned the battery from a liability into a strength, erasing doubts about range and cost in one stroke. And even that would not matter if charging remained a hassle until Toyota rewrote the rules again. Faster, smarter charging. No matter how impressive a battery's range, drivers still dread the downtime of recharging. Toyota's engineers attacked this problem with a mix of hardware and software innovation, and the result is one of the most competitive charging systems in its class. The new BZ can now charge from 30% to 80% in roughly 24 minutes using high-speed direct current fast chargers. That is fast enough to grab a coffee, stretch your legs, and be back on the road with nearly 200 more miles in the pack. Even more important is the new battery battery preconditioning system. This feature warms or cools the battery to the optimal temperature before charging begins, ensuring that drivers get maximum speed at the plug, regardless of weather conditions. Owners in cold climates, long plagued by sluggish charge times, will notice a dramatic difference. It is a small touch that shows Toyota is thinking about real-world use, not just laboratory benchmarks. Combined with access to Tesla's supercharger network, the charging improvements create a 1-2 punch. Not only can drivers go farther on a single charge, but when they do stop, the experience is faster and more reliable than ever. Charging, once the Achilles heel of EV adoption, becomes a point of confidence. Yet the biggest victory was not technical, it was human. The human-centered design, technology dazzles on spec sheets, but it is the day-to-day driving experience that defines whether customers stay loyal. Toyota learned from the stumbles of the BZ4X and overhauled the cabin of the new BZ to focus on comfort and usability. Drivers frustrated with overly complicated touchscreens will be relieved to find the return of physical buttons for critical functions like climate control and audio. The central display, now a large 14-inch panel, provides clarity without drowning users in unnecessary menus. Wireless smartphone integration works seamlessly, reducing the friction of connecting to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. The interior design also balances practicality with style. Spacious cargo capacity and generous rear seating make it family-friendly, while touches like ambient lighting, premium materials, and thoughtful ergonomics elevate it beyond the ordinary. Toyota has clearly studied the habits of its customers, focusing not on gimmicks but on making the car a companion rather than a gadget. In many ways, this human-centered philosophy is more disruptive than the horsepower or the battery. It shows Toyota understands that winning the EV race means appealing to mainstream buyers, not just tech enthusiasts. By responding to driver frustrations, Toyota transforms perception from a cautious, outdated player into a responsive and empathetic brand. And that human touch would soon become Toyota's most dangerous weapon against its rivals. Rivals in shock. When Toyota revealed the new BZ, the immediate fallout was panic inside rival boardrooms. Ford, General Motors, Hyundai, and even Volkswagen suddenly found themselves outflanked on both price and performance. Their electric crossovers, once marketed as cutting-edge bargains, now looked bloated and outdated compared with Toyota's sleeker, cheaper, and longer-range SUV. For Ford, the Mustang Mach-E became a harder sell when the Toyota BZ promised more miles and lower costs. General Motors faced similar headaches with the Chevrolet Equinox EV, a model already pitched as affordable but now dwarfed by Toyota's pricing strategy. Hyundai, celebrated for its stylish Ioniq 5, discovered that aesthetic flair was not enough when Toyota delivered practicality at a fraction of the cost. Investors were quick to punish hesitation. Shares in several automakers dipped as analysts recalculated market forecasts, projecting Toyota's aggressive entry could carve out millions of unit sales worldwide. The message was unmistakable. Toyota, long accused of dragging its feet, had finally pressed the accelerator, and everyone else would pay for the delay. Executives across Detroit, Seoul, and Wolfsburg scrambled for emergency meetings, weighing price cuts, rushed upgrades, and even subsidies to remain competitive. Yet slashing prices threatened already thin profit margins, forcing a dangerous gamble. Lose money to stay relevant, or stand still and watch Toyota eat the market alive. The market trembled, but the true shock was yet to come, because Toyota's true advantage was not just the car, it was the ecosystem it tapped into next. The infrastructure power grab. Toyota's decision to adopt Tesla's North American charging standard blindsided competitors who had invested heavily in alternative networks. Ford and General Motors had each partnered with charging companies to build out infrastructure, but those efforts were fragmented, plagued by reliability issues, and too slow to scale. By aligning with Tesla, Toyota skipped years of investment and instantly offered its drivers access to thousands of reliable supercharger stations across the continent. Consumers saw the move for what it was, a shortcut to confidence. For rivals, this was devastating. Billions spent on bespoke charging networks now looked like wasted money. Worse still, Toyota's adoption of Tesla's standard signaled to suppliers, regulators, and consumers that the NACS plug was the new default, rendering other systems obsolete. Charging standards are not just technical details, they are power struggles. By throwing its weight behind NACS, Toyota shifted the balance away from legacy consortia and toward a duopoly of Tesla and Toyota shaping infrastructure policy. The effect cascaded quickly. Smaller automakers began hinting they too might adopt NACS, fearing consumer backlash if their vehicles could not connect to the most robust network. In less than a year, the industry's infrastructure map was redrawn. What once looked like Tesla's proprietary advantage had morphed into a shared ecosystem dominated by the two giants. And once infrastructure tilted, politicians could not resist stepping into the fight. Policy in motion. The political class had been cautiously nudging electric vehicle adoption for years, but Toyota's disruptive announcement forced them to accelerate their response. In Washington, lawmakers began debating whether subsidies should favor vehicles compatible with the NACS standard, arguing that taxpayer incentives should not support outdated or fragmented technology. Proposals emerged to streamline federal funding toward universal standards, and Toyota's alignment with Tesla gave that movement sudden credibility. In Europe, regulators began revisiting safety and charging certifications, eyeing ways to harmonize rules to prevent their own automakers from falling behind. Brussels policymakers, once protective of local firms like Volkswagen and Renault, could not ignore the competitive threat of Toyota's BZ storming into global markets. The conversation shifted from whether to support EV adoption to how to keep European factories alive in the face of Japanese and American dominance. Meanwhile, in Asia, governments watched closely as Toyota's partnership with Tesla altered the geopolitical calculus. Subsidies for domestic automakers in China and South Korea looked more vulnerable as consumers gravitated toward vehicles that could promise reliable long-range charging abroad. Toyota's strategy was shaping not just the market, but also the legislative frameworks around it. Yet while politicians debated tax credits and charging rules, the real consequences were felt by workers on the factory floor, because every bold announcement carries an unspoken cost. But while politicians debated, workers on the ground faced a harsher reality: the labor shockwave. The rise of Toyota's BZ was good news for consumers and shareholders, but it unsettled workers across the automotive world. In the United States, union leaders feared that Toyota's aggressive push into efficient EV production would accelerate automation, reducing the need for traditional assembly line labor. In Europe, where wages are high and labor protections strong, executives warned that staying competitive against Toyota's cost structure might require plant closures or relocations. The result was a wave of anxiety rippling through communities built around car factories. Even inside Toyota's own operations, the shift raised questions. Building vehicles with new battery chemistries and advanced power electronics demands different skills than traditional mechanical assembly. That meant retraining thousands of workers or facing redundancies. The promise of EVs creating green jobs clashed with the reality that many of those jobs required entirely new expertise in software, electronics, and chemical engineering. Labor unions responded with urgency. Strikes were threatened, negotiations heated up, and calls for government protections grew louder. Workers asked why consumers should celebrate cheaper cars when the hidden cost might be lost livelihoods in Detroit, Stuttgart, or Seoul. For many, Toyota's efficiency looked like progress on paper, but upheaval in practice. This was not just a product launch. It was a shift in how wealth, power, and work would be distributed across nations. And if you think the fallout ends there, wait until you see the ripple hitting the global economy. The price war to end them all. Toyota's announcement did not just create headlines, it created panic in pricing departments across the globe. The BZ arrived cheaper than rivals while offering better range, performance, and reliability. That simple equation forces an uncomfortable reality. If Toyota can profitably sell such a car at this price, then everyone else will need to cut margins to survive. Already, industry insiders whisper that Ford and General Motors will be forced to lower sticker prices on their electric SUVs by several $1,000s. Hyundai and Volkswagen face similar dilemmas, knowing that consumers will not ignore a Toyota that offers more for less. The ripple effect is brutal. Car companies rely on delicate profit margins, often just a few percentage points. If Toyota resets the floor, the entire industry must follow, even if it means bleeding cash in the short term. It is not hard to imagine a scenario where automakers begin undercutting each other in a downward spiral, echoing the destructive price wars of the consumer electronics industry 2 decades ago. Vehicles that once carried prestige could suddenly feel overpriced, their value propositions shredded by Toyota's discipline and scale. A global race to the bottom has begun. Toyota set the rules by making affordability a weapon, and rivals have little choice but to play along. And when prices fall, supply chains crack next. The battery supply battle. The price war is not fought only on showroom floors. It reaches deep into the mines, factories, and ports that supply the raw materials of the electric age. Toyota's decision to refine its battery chemistry, emphasizing lithium iron phosphate and silicon carbide, shifts pressure across entire industries. Countries rich in cobalt and nickel, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo or Indonesia, suddenly see reduced leverage as automakers move away from those minerals. Conversely, suppliers of lithium and companies pioneering phosphate-based cathodes experience surging demand. This shift forces a global realignment. Mining firms chase new contracts with Japanese and Chinese manufacturers, while European suppliers worry about being frozen out. Even energy companies take notice, since battery technology is tied directly to renewable storage. Toyota's bet on more abundant and ethically sourced materials appeals to regulators in markets increasingly sensitive to environmental and labor abuses. In turn, governments begin reconsidering which supply chains they will subsidize or protect. Factories also face upheaval. Plants designed for nickel-heavy chemistries may find themselves obsolete within a decade. Investment capital pivots toward facilities that can process iron phosphate or integrate silicon carbide chips at scale. The shockwaves extend from rural mining towns to high-tech semiconductor labs. Toyota's battery choices are not just engineering decisions, they are geopolitical moves that reorder power in the 21st century. But the ripple does not stop at factories. It is coming straight for consumers' wallets in ways they never expected. When cars judge people, for consumers, Toyota's innovations promise affordability and convenience. But they also raise unsettling questions about surveillance and control. Modern electric vehicles, including the new BZ, are rolling computers, collecting vast streams of behavioral data. They know how hard you brake, how often you check mirrors, how your mood shifts based on music or traffic. This data has immense value, not only for Toyota but for insurers, lenders, and even employers. Imagine applying for car insurance only to discover that your premiums are higher because your driving history shows frequent late-night trips, or being denied credit because your reaction times have slowed, suggesting a higher accident risk. Already, financial institutions explore how mobility data can refine credit scoring models. Toyota's ability to mass-produce affordable EVs ensures that such systems will not remain niche. They will become mainstream. When millions of families buy the BZ, they also buy into a new regime of data-driven evaluation. For consumers, the convenience of rapid charging and long range may mask the hidden cost of living under constant measurement. Your car no longer just serves you. It judges you, records you, and feeds your digital profile into algorithms that shape economic opportunities. This is the quiet revolution behind Toyota's bold move, and behind it all lies a strategy bigger than any single car or battery. You've seen how deep this runs. Don't miss what happens next. Hit subscribe right now. The next chapter's already unfolding, and you'll want to be first to know. Toyota's empire play. Step back, and Toyota's true ambition becomes clear. The BZ is not just a product launch. It is an entry point into an integrated empire of mobility, energy, and data. Consider the pieces: affordable EVs that move millions, access to Tesla's charging infrastructure, partnerships in battery technology, and a reputation for reliability that reassures cautious buyers. Add to this Toyota's ongoing work in hybrids, hydrogen, and even autonomous systems, and the company begins to look less like an automaker and more like a mobility platform. In this vision, cars are merely nodes in a wider ecosystem. They connect to energy grids, communicate with homes, and feed behavioral data into cloud networks. Insurance, financing, and even urban planning could flow through Toyota's channels. Once such a system scales, it becomes nearly impossible for competitors to dislodge. Consumers do not just buy a vehicle, they buy into Toyota's world. The company can then leverage that position to dominate adjacent industries, from energy storage to artificial intelligence services. This is the long game, transforming Toyota from a car manufacturer into a global infrastructure provider. It is why rivals tremble, why governments adjust policies, and why workers and consumers alike feel the ground shifting beneath their feet. Because after this, the race is not about building cars, it is about owning the road itself. Toyota may have just redrawn the future, and the story is far from over. If you want to stay ahead of every twist, hit subscribe right now, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who needs to know. The competition's scrambling, the stakes are rising, and trust me, you'll want front row seats.